All right, I appreciate you sending the message for the elbow pain instead of doing an actual like TikTok video tagging you in there. I wanted to do this so that you get a full understanding of the concept that we're gonna be kind of training under, and then it's obviously gonna be a little bit easier for me to post this the way I have instead of doing a TikTok because it's gonna be a very long format. So without further ado, we'll get into it. Also, the assumption is that with your pressing, tricep extensions, everything that you're doing, you've got good form. So I trust that that's going okay. If you do need help with that as well, feel free to let me know. But otherwise, you know, good, strong upper back, elbows are in for say like the bench. And then for the tricep extensions, you know, we're not shrugging so that the elbows aren't compensating too much because a lot of times, you know, fixing those things can get rid of some of those local pains as well. Otherwise, we are going to try and work together right now on working on the elbow pain you have. So what is the concept that we're going to be training under? Essentially, every joint in our body has particular directions that it can move in. So for example, your joint, you know, the flexion and extension, which is kind of the traditional standard motions that a lot of exercises put us through. But we also have inversion and eversion. Those are two motions. I don't know if the video caught it, you know, eversion, which is a very small amount, and eversion, which is a little bit more. Those ranges typically aren't really being trained in a press or whatever. Obviously in sports, for example, in a throw, you know, any sort of like basketball, obviously you get a little bit more of that range, but in traditional training, we don't get that. And a lot of times with mobility training and stuff that I've seen and I've tried in the many years of the past, nothing really had as much of a focus on that full spectrum than what I've gotten into with joint specific strength training and controlled articular rotations and so on, which we'll get into in a minute. So that's, for example, the joint. That's the example for the wrist joint. And what we're hoping to achieve, you know, through this modality over time is that every range that we have access to has to be strong and has to be something that we can access with the same amount of tension that we can put into the standard mid-range. We should be able to do that also in the end range of the different ranges that that joint can go through. So what we're hoping to achieve through this training modality is that from every range that we have access to, we want to be just as strong on the end ranges as the kind of like mid ranges. So for example, in a bench press, you're going to be kind of in that general extended position. Whereas in flexion, we're obviously not training anything that requires us to do that unless you're doing those crazy push-ups. And same kind of idea with our eversion and inversion. And so what we want to do, and what I want you to understand is a lot of our all of our joints have a certain physical capacity of movement, right? Like let's say if the full range of your eversion, flexion, inversion, and extension is this much, we sometimes, or a lot of times, will only have access to say like 70% of it. And in this 30% range is where most of injuries occur. And that 30% is the extended end range that we generally don't train in, right? So obviously it's very unlikely for you to get injured in this position, but it's very likely that you'll get injured if your wrist goes all the way down to the end range of that extension. So same kind of idea here is that if we only have access to this 70%, we want to eventually close that gap and gain control of that full 100%. And so what do we do with this? So we have every joint, again, I'm going to be using the wrist as an example, is that you have the eversion, you have the flexion, you have inversion, and you have extension. And so what we typically will be training a lot under, and you'll see in this video, is what's called a controlled articulate rotation. And what we want to do is we want to go into every end range of motion that we have, and we want to kind of understand, hey, where is my wrist in relation to space and in relation to the adjoining bones and joints and muscle that that joint connects to, right? And so we're going to go back around from inversion to flexion to eversion and all the way back to extension. And so This is very different than the typical kind of, mobility stuff that you'll see people do, or it's, arm swings. You'll see them grab the most famous one is the dowel, where someone's just going kind of going back around. Don't get me wrong, that's great. That is way better than just say like not doing anything, or just kind of getting in, doing some of these, and grabbing one of those bands and doing a couple of chest press pushes, banded chest presses, and grabbing it behind you, doing some funky shit that I don't even know what it does. So when we mix in intention, this is why I say a lot in my videos, is that when we mix in intention, intensity, and joint specific programming, that's exactly it. We have intent because the intent is, hey, I want to get into this end range without, I mean, the wrist is not a good example. Is, for example, in a shoulder, is if I want to go fully into extension, I don't want to bring the scapula into it. I want to make sure I can only bring my shoulder into flexion, or if I'm going to do internal rotation with my shoulder, I don't want my scapula to roll over. So that's where that intent comes in. The intensity comes in from the same idea with bench press. You have a program where it has volume and intensity. The intensity is putting on more weight. So you're going from 135, 225, whatever. That's increasing the intensity, and we can do the same thing with this kind of training. Whereas when we come into this end range of our inversion, we can put 10% pressure, we can put 20% pressure, we can put 30% of our pressure, we can go all the way up to the 100% of your own internal intensity and pressure that you can put going into that range of motion, right? And the nice thing about that is, because it's not externally loaded, the chance of injury is almost zero, because you would almost have to be Hulk to injure yourself through your own exertion of energy. So it's a very safe modality. It's very nice. It's a very nice technique for us to be able to close that gap, because every time we go into that end range that we own, we're telling your nervous system like, hey, we're safe here. We can create force here, and we can actually adapt to this range so that we can continue to unlock more. And for a case like an inversion on your wrist, it is kind of that end range. So you kind of do have the full 100%, but do you have the strength you have at 30% of that range versus the 100% of that range? So those are the things we're going to be working into. And for example, another example for a shoulder joint, because that's kind of one of our most mobile joints, because it's a ball and socket similar to our hip, is you get internal rotation, external rotation, you get flexion and extension, you get abduction and adduction. And then when we put all of that together, we start with external rotation, we go all the way up to flexion, and then we start internal rotation at the same time, going into extension from behind, which is almost like a mix of abduction and adduction. And we get extension at the very back while going into the full internal rotation. And we slowly come down. And while we hold the internal rotation all the way, we're gonna come back into that kind of raised extension, almost like an abduction, and we start external rotation, and we come all the way back, which, that's a whole different thing, and I put up videos about that as well. But right now, we're gonna be focusing on the elbow, which kind of similar to the wrist, shoulder. We've got the flexion, you got extension, you got essentially internal rotation and external rotation for your elbow as well. So without further ado, let's get into that one. All right, so we're gonna get into it now. What we always do before any of the we do. Now again, we are focusing on the elbow, but anytime we do this, we do the full controlled articulate rotation, short for CAR. That's what I'll say from now on. So if I say CAR, that's what I mean. Anytime we want to do any of these workouts, we always start with CARs, and we start from our head all the way down. Now, for sometimes, if you want to save time, you really want to focus on an area, just do the CARs of that particular joint. So how we want to start is, again, same kind of idea. We said flexion, extension, internal and external rotation for our elbow. And so that's exactly how we're going to start doing our CARs. We'll start all the way down. We can make a fist, again, with intention and with intensity. Now, the intensity doesn't need to be 100%, but we want to move nice and slow. We want to create about 20 to 30% tension so that the motion that we're going through has contraction and energy behind it, right? So we start with flexion, we're gonna extension, we're gonna slowly start coming into flexion. And I know it might not look like you're doing much, but just kind of trust the process and go with it, right? And we're gonna begin internal rotation, nice and slow. And again, when you kind of get to your end range, try to see if there's a little bit more. You don't need to go through pain. If you have pain at any point, just stop and stay outside of that pain. You want to kind of imagine you're coloring in between the lines. So you don't want to go outside that pain line. You want to just kind of stay within where it feels comfortable. So right now, this is naturally kind of where I feel like I'm hitting my end range, but I'm going to explore a little bit more and slowly come into extension again. And as I come into extension, I'm keeping that original internal rotation tension on. So I don't want to come into rotation and just kind of be loosey-goosey here, or I want to come into extension loosey-goosey. I want to make sure I'm continuously going into that external rotation. And I might get more. I might have more internal rotation here than I have here, and that's okay. I'll discover that. I'll find that out. And we go there, nice, and we go into full lockout. Now, same idea, we want to begin the external rotation, making sure the shoulder doesn't come with it, or you're not twisting at your torso. We want to keep only the rotation from your elbow down. So we go back to the outside. Make sure, again, your elbow should kind of point to the same direction when you're going through this. This is where my elbow is. That's where that rotation. Anytime you feel like your elbow is pointing to a different direction, know that your shoulder is making the movement. So we keep this stationary. Again, same thing. Nice and slow, same idea. We want to continue to create that external rotation tension as we come into flexion. Now we do internal. So we're going to do 5 of these. This is the second one. So every time you go from down to up, that's a half. This is 1. Again, half. This is 1. We're going to do 5 of those. Then we're going to do 5 starting with the internal rotation bias, and we're going to come up. Same kind. I'm speeding up a little bit, but this is what the full rep speed should be like. We're going to go nice and slow, creating tension as we come up. I am creating this internal rotation as I'm coming up, all the way through, and we begin the external rotation, and again, finding a little bit more range. You're basically making a hyper pressured bicep flexion. And coming all the way. You see I'm shaking a little bit? That's exactly what we want. Now that's 1. Same thing. Rotate, making sure the elbow doesn't come. We're getting a little bit more. We come up. That is half right now. And rotate, and same thing. So we're going to do 5 essentially palm up and then down, and we're going to do 5 with palm down, up, and then down. That's our warm-up. And what that does is it allows you to understand, like, hey, how much do I own at rep 1, which gives you kind of a general understanding, and how much can I own by rep 5 on each bias that I start with. That gives you kind of an understanding of where you're starting from, and every time you do cars, every time as you go through this progression of doing these exercises, your cars end up having more range. Now, we're not just trying to fight for creating range. That's not the purpose of this exercise or just this modality. The purpose is to strengthen what you have and eventually start to access more of the physical capacity you have in that range if you don't already. And if, like I said, if like, for example, like a wrist or smaller joints or any joint that you essentially have capacity or have full access to that capacity, That's where we want to say, okay, now do I have the strength I do at 30% at 100%? And how we typically can test these things is through passive and active. So for example, a good one if you want to do quickly right at home is your internal rotation with your hip. Is you want to see how much can you internally rotate your hip without, bending and twisting everywhere else. You want to keep nice and stable at your hip, and you just want to see how much internal rotation you have. And then you can just kind of relax this hard on a chair though. You're going to have to sit down or lie down on the ground, and somebody can help you. Is they bring your leg up, and then they physically, without you putting any tension on your leg, as if, if they pick it up, it just falls down. They want to pick it up and they want to rotate it slowly and see where your internal rotation ends. So for example, if you can go up to here, but somebody else can bring your hip up to here, that's the gap you have between passive and active, or active and passive. Passive is when somebody obviously is moving it. And same kind of idea with external. And anytime we say internal and external, it's the rotation direction with respect to your body. So that's why I say internal is because your femur is rotating internally to your body, and external because your femur is rotating externally to your body. So with that said, we're gonna go into the exercises now. The exercises that I'm going to show you can be done in 3 different areas of the full range of motion of that joint. The concept is the same, the placement is different. So for example, I'm going to lower this a little bit. So for a pressing exercise or for a tricep extension, for example, is you're going to be in this kind of like adducted and, kind of neutral grip, which is essentially halfway between the external and external. And how we're going to train that is come all the way into flexion. We're going to be halfway into that range, and we're going to be fully extended. And we're going to go through that exercise now. And I'm going to show you one with a rotation as well. So what I have is a 45-pound club L here. I know you might not have this at home. If you do have a home gym, a barbell would work, or if you're going to do this at your gym, a barbell. Essentially, you just need a kind of solid object that's just about your grips width thick. You could do it with, say, like a door frame or something, or at home, you can grab the leg of a stool or a chair, anything that you can comfortably create force onto, obviously without it breaking or without it moving. So we're gonna grab the prop that we have, and what we wanna do, we're gonna start with the full flexed position first, and you can kind of come into this range so you can kind of close this gap here, and we're gonna be in that neutral grip. And we're just gonna hang out here for just about, say, 30 seconds to a minute, just to, again, warm up these muscles that we just kind of did the cars with in the range that we're gonna be in now, which is a flexed position. And we have the inside of this kind of joint complexion, which has a shortened range. And then we have the outside, which is the lengthened range. So we're gonna be training both of those right now. So we're gonna just hang out here for a minute, let the muscles over here on this side, some blood flow, get used to this position, and you yourself too, just breathe nice and deep into your diaphragm. I know breath work is something you'll probably hear everywhere with any kind of exercise you do, but you just want to calm your nervous system down. And just relax, make sure we're in I think it's called a parasympathetic stage, so that, you're not firing on all cylinders, you're just kind of relaxed, you're letting yourself, get into that Zen stage. And then from there, what we want to do, there's 2 things we're going to be doing. We're going to be creating force in 2 different directions. One is as if you're going to do a tricep extension. So it's this motion, but it's going to be isometric. So you're not going to move anything, and we don't want anything to move. So that's why we want the thing you're holding onto to be nice and stable and strong. And so what essentially we're going to work up to is about 60 to 70% of our maximum strength. So for example, if you can tricep extend 100 pounds, we want to imitate what 60 to 70 pounds of that feels like. So that also takes a little bit of discovery, kind of figuring out where your max is. And it doesn't have to be an exact science, but when I say like 20%, I don't want you to kind of go at like full kind of pressure that you would with like a 70-pound tricep extension. We want to go as if you're just kind of warming up with a 20 or a 30 pound. So We're gonna start nice and slow. Again, same kind of idea with the breathing. We're gonna initiate that pull down with the like the tricep extension. Sorry, I kind of had like a brain freeze. But we're gonna initiate that tricep extension feeling without lifting our shoulder or without obviously moving this forward or anything of that nature. And you're gonna notice, like, I'm not gonna move, but I am starting to create tension at a 10%, at a 20%. We want to go nice and slow. We're going to go to 30%. We're going to go to 40%. And when we get to 50%, I want you to start creating tension in the rest of your body. So I want you to make a fist here. I want you to create tension into this item that you're holding on to. I want your feet to start clamping into the ground. I want your glutes to start squeezing exactly as if you were going to do your 70 to 80% of a tricep extension. You're going to have a nice solid base on the ground. Your shoulders are going to be stacked. So it's the same principles in a workout that we do with weights, bench, whatever. We're going to do that here. So 40%. We're going to slowly go into 50%. You should feel a very good tension in the back of your elbow. Same principle with pain that I said. If there's ever any pain, we want to stay outside of that. So if it's painful for you right now up to 50%, we can stay behind. The principle is the same. So what I'm about to tell you right now, do that, but do it up to 40% and then proceed with the next steps. And if there's no pain, then we can work up to 60%. And that's fine. If you have pain here, but you think here will be better, then do it here. Work up to 70%. If again at 40 or 50% you notice pain, same idea. We'll stop behind that and we proceed with the next steps that I'm about to tell you right now. So 50%, we're gonna create that tension in our body. We're gonna go 60% and we're gonna hold here for 10 seconds. I'm gonna go 1, 2, 3, 4, drive this thing into the ground, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And once we're done here, I want you to imagine you want to lift this. So you see how I went from down to up? I want you to imagine you're going to lift this item where now you're going to feel tension here, the opposite of what we were doing for 30 seconds. We're going to go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Perfect. I think I said 30 seconds. I meant 10. My bad. So 10 seconds up, and we're going to release. Okay? Now, you should feel kind of a pump in this region. Obviously, your triceps are going to probably feel the pump. And now, we're going to go through 2 reps of that same controlled articular rotations, where we start from the bottom, we go into that end range that we originally started with. We're going to come all the way up, rotate down, up, rotate down, and then we're going to go 2 reps of the other way. We're going to go up, down, up, down. That was that. Now, same kind of process. We're going to go at a mid-range. Now, what you'll notice is we're going to go full flexed, we're going to go mid-range, and we're going to go extended. Every time we do one of those, we're going to do a 2-rep controlled articular rotation from the 2 different biases. And every time we're doing the 10-second, essentially like push and a 10-second pull, we're working up to wherever we don't have pain. But if right now you don't have pain up to your 70%, great, we're going to work up to 70. Just like when you get onto a bench press for, say, the first time, you're not going to try and test your max. You're not going to go to 100%, try to bust out 225, whatever it is. You're going to work up nice and easy. You're going to put on 30 pounds, 40 pounds, 50 pounds. And you're like, you know what? I could get a good 3 sets of 8 reps on this. That's perfect. That's going to be my top set. That's exactly what we're doing right now is we're working up to 70% because we're trying to build internal capacity in this joint up to that percentage so that later when we want to go to 80, 90, and 100, we're not kind of overworking that joint, which again, like I said, we're not Hulk. We're not going to injure the joint with our 100%, but it's just good training practice. It's good technique, and it's just something that, again, progressive overload, you know the drill. So going to the same kind of idea. What we're going to do is hang out here for a minute. We're gonna then slowly initiate from a 10, 20, 30, 40, 50%. And when we're at 50, we wanna create nice, strong tension. Start to create that tension. You can kind of be out if that helps you kind of feel the tension here that you're gonna push down. But again, make sure you're not gonna do this, you're gonna do that. Nothing else moves. If this is comfortable, then stay here so that when you get to 50%, you can start creating that tension, or you can just put it here. That's not an issue. 70% or wherever the pain starts, we're gonna come kind of 10% behind that, hold for 10 seconds, and then we're gonna go the opposite way. So we're gonna pull up now. You're gonna feel, you see when I'm doing this, then when I pull up, this starts to work. 10 seconds, same idea, none of this, none of that. If you're gonna be here, just start to pull up, make sure this doesn't go lower, so kind of support it maybe with your hand. 10 seconds, and then same idea, 2 each way. Then we're gonna start with the full, sit down like this. We're gonna start with it full extended. Same kind of idea. We're gonna start pulling down. You might feel tension here. If you also feel cramping at any point, that's something I should have said maybe a little bit earlier as well. If you feel cramping anywhere, the best thing you can do is pull through the cramp. What the cramp is your nervous system is freaking out and it's telling your brain like, we can't produce force here. We shouldn't be here, and you're gonna get that cramp. Now, I promise you, I've done this too. I have had terrible cramps, and many times I've tapped out. I've had to come out of it, but many times, similar to when you're doing your 1 rep max, you're pushing through, you're struggling, we don't wanna give up. So if you feel if you feel a cramp anywhere, try to work through it. Now don't increase the intensity. So if you're at 40% and you're feeling the cramp, just gonna hang out on that 40%. Give it like, 5 to 10 seconds, see what's gonna happen. I know we're essentially doing more, so work through that cramp, see if it goes away. Once it goes away within the 10 seconds, you can just kind of go up to another 10% and then initiate the opposite kind of pressure that we talked about. Or if you want to kind of pull through, be like, you know what, I'm going for it, then go for the 50, 60, up to the 70% as well. So same kind of idea here. We want to begin that essentially tricep extension imitation. So we're going into extension and you want to be nice and locked out. Something else that can help too is having something that could be under your arm, maybe like this, so that you can get that full pressure in there. But I personally like this, so I can do a nice grip up here or down here, and I can begin that tension. I can go into 10, 20, 30, and I can start squeezing at my 50 and 60%, and then I can start picking it up with a nice straight elbow, so you don't wanna go in, up, we're gonna hold, and I don't know if I mentioned for the opposite direction that we're gonna go into, we're gonna go at the same percentage that we went the other direction. So if we worked up to 70%, then I want you to do 70% the other way. If we had pain and we did up to 50%, then we're gonna do 50% on the other side. Now, if you did 70% here, and you're about to do 70% on the other direction and you have pain, then we're gonna, again, same principle. We're gonna back off to a percentage that we feel comfortable. Obviously, try to memorize, try to establish a range of, let's say if you were about to do your hypothetical 70 and you had pain, try to understand where and how much you're adjusting to come out of pain so that you can replicate that same range as well. So that's the 3 different positions that we're creating an isometric contraction for your elbow. It's essentially in a flexed, half, and an extended range. And we go into a full controlled articulate rotation there. And then next, I'm gonna grab a sip of water. And then next, I'm gonna show you an isometric contraction for rotation. Let's go. All right, so we are gonna go into the rotation aspect of this. And same kind of idea. I am obviously using the same prop that I have for you. Same kind of idea. If you can, now obviously with this one, you can't really use a stool. If you have actually a dumbbell at home, I think this one's gonna be a lot easier with a dumbbell. Or if you're gonna go try this at a gym, if you wanna grab one of those smaller curling bars that are straight, not the easy ones. or just a barbell. You can put that on your leg, and we can go from there. So the principle does not change. It is the same idea. And just in case if you are interested in obviously learning more about this, what we're actually performing is called a pails and rails. And what they stand for is a progressive angular isometric loading and a regressive angular isometric loading. And what basically fancy way of saying creating an isometric tension towards the lengthened side, which is the progressive, and the regressive is the shortened side. So that's what we're doing. Same kind of idea. So again, that does not change. We're now just changing how we're doing it. Again, it's going to be in 3 different positions that we can do this. Now, obviously I'm saying 3 just for us to kind of get started. We're doing like kind of the end range here, the mid and the end on the other side. If you feel like you have particular pain at a very distinct part of this range, you can do it at that range. So that is a little bit flexible because again, our joints aren't like the gears of a car where they have an exact point of reference. Our joints are very fluid, so you have this entire range that you can train into. For the sake of simplicity, obviously, we're doing it as such. So even for me, actually, this is a little bit awkward, but I can kind of just bring this up into my chest, or I can come a little bit lower. And same kind of methodology is we're going to just chill here, hang out. And what we're first training is because we're grabbing it from under, our progressive is going to be the lengthened side. So that's going to be on the end here. We're going to start to initiate on this end, and that's why we want to grab it in a false grip, because when we tend to have it like this, the grip is not as good because we're missing out on the thumb creating tension. So we're going to throw it under so that this thumb, when it's trying to create this rotation, is going to get a nice good kind of addition into the tension we can create. And then we're going to go into the regressive side, which because we're like this is the shortened side. Like there's no more there to go, so that is the shortened side. And then you're gonna imagine as if you're gonna try to create rotation through this like last portion of your pinky. You want to kind of, do this against the bar, and you're trying to kind of create that tension there. So after we hang out here for about 30 seconds to a minute, we're gonna create our tension slowly going into 10%. We're going to go into 20%. Again, you are creating this motion here. So we're going into 20. Breathing, same kind of idea, nice and easy. We're going to go into 30. We're going to go into 40. Once we get into 50, I want you to start creating tension in your whole body. You're going to go into 60. Same idea. If you have pain anywhere, stay 10% behind of that. Go into 60 and 70 and hold for 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And now we're going to create same 70% on the other side, pulling this way. 4, 3, 2, and 1. Once we're done, same idea. We're going to do 2 of each side and 2 on the other side. Then we go into, I kind of was doing the half range. We can go kind of into that full now just for the sake of showing you so that you can get a good understanding, and then you can kind of play with the different positions yourself. So once we're here, same kind of idea. You should also by now, if you've been doing a couple of reps, the previous one and this one, you should have a good pump literally around your elbow. So if you're not feeling that right now, shoot me a DM, tell me what your kind of weird feelings are. But right now, me just by doing this, definitely I feel a little bit at the bottom of my tricep, but it is going to be a weird feeling. You're going to feel a pump around the joint you're gonna work on. So my favorite are hips. You're literally like, when you do squats and all that, sure, you're gonna get a little bit of kind of, you know, soreness around the kind of ligamenty area of your hip, but you're gonna feel it in your legs, your, you know, your quads, your hamstrings. But man, when you start doing some of this stuff for your hips, like, you're gonna feel what that ball and socket feels like when it's sore. And it's, man, it is a phenomenal feeling. So we're gonna go here, hang out here for about 30 seconds to a minute. Once we're ready, we're gonna go into the internal rotation because that is the lengthened side. So we're gonna go nice and slow. We're gonna start with 10%. We're gonna go into 20%, making sure we're locked out. We're gonna go into 30%. Gonna go into 4, 5. We're gonna start to tense up. 6. We're gonna go 7. We go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10. And we're gonna go the opposite way instantly. We're gonna go 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. And once we're done, we're gonna go with our 2 and 2. I'm even starting to kind of get warm and sweaty, and so should you. I'm hoping to get a heart monitor actually soon so I can show people over a video what this actually feels like. And you're gonna be, I'm hoping, surprised as to how much your body actually starts to work when you actually aren't creating any movement in your body. You're literally just holding stationary, but you should start to feel shaky. I actually, a lot of times after doing these exercises, I start to get really hungry because of the amount of tension you're just creating in your body. You literally just kind of feel like, damn, like I kind of want to eat something. So make sure you got water, make sure you got hydration, electrolytes, whatever you need. But obviously when you're starting out, you don't want to go crazy. With the 70, I think is a great starting range. And then, yeah, obviously have any questions you have as well, please do let me know. One thing I didn't mention is for each of those that we did, so for example, with the extension and flexion that we did an up, down, and a bottom. We did one of each. Generally speaking, again, you can kind of do it as many, similar to a programming of a bench press. For benching, for example, I mean, chest, you're gonna do a couple different exercises, a couple sets of each, but for benching, you're not gonna do like 10 sets. Same kind of idea here. Treat it as, you know, this is your bench, this is your flies, and this is your whatever else. So you're gonna do, you know, maybe 2 or 3 sets here, 2 or 3 sets here, and 2 or 3 sets there. You just did 6 sets of flexion and extension, pails and rails. So that's pretty good. Same kind of idea for our rotation, you know, doing it here, here, and here. That's 2 of each. That's 6 sets of doing a rotational pails and rails. And that should be plenty good. Again, by the next day, judge based on how sore you are, how much more you feel like you had capacity. We can adjust there. And then I think that's all I had to say with the overall volume of how much we're gonna do. And then obviously with different joints, I mean, the elbow is gonna be a little bit tougher because again, it only really moves in these 4 ranges. So there's no kind of like rotational as a full sphere modality that we can really get creative. But for example, with the shoulder, we can do an internal and external rotation in adduction. We can do it in abduction. We can do it in flexion. We can do it in extension. So there's a lot of ways we can do, where with the elbow, it's a little bit more restricted. However, another variation of this can be being kind of really abducted and doing it here, being really abducted, but doing it a little bit more towards your body. So in almost a internally rotated bias. You can do it in a more externally rotated bias. That would be kind of the hardest of the bunch because now you're having to hold adduction external rotation and you're creating rotation, that's going to crush you, and that's going to take a lot of shoulder strength as well. We can do it in almost an abducted way as well, where we can create that. Now, obviously the prop you're gonna need is going to also make a difference in where your shoulder can be, but tons of ways we can get creative with this. So yeah, and then with the next thing we can get into is same idea, but now we're gonna have our arm over. Now this one's gonna be a little bit tricky because what we're gonna do is, this is our shortened range. So this is gonna be after we create that rotation. But we have our progressive side, which at the beginning is going to be to the outside, and that's gonna be a little bit tough. So I would still recommend doing a false grip, because when you grab as a, apologies, when you're grabbing it by a full kind of thumb locked, locked thumb grip, when we're gonna initiate this at first, you might feel a little bit of discomfort from your thumb into this part of your wrist. So I do want you to be mindful of that. Now, if, and that's actually something to strengthen over time, that can be part of your wrist pails and rails, is to just kind of have it here, because your wrist and your elbow are rotating together. So there's no way we can kind of isolate the wrist by itself. But what we can do is, if when you're trying to focus on your elbow, the wrist is the limiting factor, we can actually do pails and rails for the wrist of just create, I don't know if you see kind of where my wrists kind of try to create that tension, and you'll see this ligament start to pop out. That actually can be a part of our wrist training. So that's something for later. So if you are comfortable on creating tension enough with that grip, go for it. If not, you can go with a false. And if you kind of feel like, you know, it's gonna lift off here, you can kind of put the other thumb so that you can get a full, you know, full feeling of what that torque is gonna feel like. So we're gonna go with the same idea. We can go with the full, we're gonna go mid, and we can go with the extension. We'll start with the mid just for the sake of the video, and it is a little bit easier to demonstrate. So hang out here, 30 seconds to a minute, and then we are going to start again. This is our pails, this is our rails, because we're already in that end range. That's another thing actually to keep in mind, is anytime we're gonna go into these positions, make sure the shortened side that we're gonna be on is actually at its end range. Because if you're gonna be here and you have tons more to go, it's not to say the exercise is getting wasted, but remember that kind of bar chart that I'm telling you is, this is the amount of physical capacity we have, and let's say we're 70% and we want to push this boundary. Well, if we're not at the end range, we're training here, which is still great. A lot of times I have done that where I'm like, hey, you know what? I don't want to really focus on the end range today. I want to really get strong in this stage. And that can translate into a lot of lifts. Like for me, for my Olympic lifting, a lot of times I want to get my wrist strong, not necessarily at its full end range, but just kind of in that like middle range. And we can do that too. But for the purposes of what we're trying to accomplish right now, that we want to make sure that, like when I'm gripping this right now here, I don't have any more internal rotation. I can't go any more than that. But if, let's say, this was here, then at this position, I got tons more to go. So I wanna make sure the thing I'm grabbing is actually putting me in the end range of the shortened side. So once we're here, we're gonna start with 10%, creating this rotation externally, as if we're gonna lift this up like that, but obviously we're not going to. So also because this is absolutely heavy and I can't even if I tried. So we're gonna go 10%, 20%, 30%, 40%. And between each 10%, we want to give about 3 to 5 seconds to get a nice a nice feeling of what that torque generation feels like. So we can go to 40 and 50. Once we're at 50, we want to create tension. If sometimes if you don't know how to create tension, you can grab onto the chair you're on. You can grab onto your leg and start kind of squeezing. Imagine you're squeezing your thighs, you're pushing your feet into the ground, grab the prop. grab your arm, whatever you can do, just close that chain and create tension right before like a deadlift or right before like a bench when you squeeze your lats and you grip the bar and you just press the bar enough where you're not lifting it, but you're creating torque. That's what we want to do. Set the tension 50, 60. We go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10. And we're gonna go up. And then you saw how my elbow moved. You correct that. You bring it back to the original position. You go 70% internally. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10. That's that. And we go 2 and 2. Now, every time after we do the pails and rails, and when we go back into those 2 reps of cars that we're doing, man, I got the craziest pump here right now. What we're hoping to achieve is every time we're going through those cars after, is we're trying to see, hey, can I get a little more from the original cars I did before the exercise? Can I get a little bit more? I didn't know how to finish that sentences. So when you're doing this, you want to see, can I get a little bit more from the original cars I was doing? And if not, that's totally okay. We're still going to go through that. It does not mean you failed the exercise. It does not mean that did not do anything. It just means, hey, you know what? I have the full range of my internal rotation for my elbow. Or, hey, I just haven't gotten there yet. It's just like how if you're going to do a bench press, the first day you do 135, you can't expect by the end of the workout that you're gonna do 155, or by the next day you do a bench, you can do 155. You know, maybe 2 weeks, maybe 3 weeks, you can do 155, then 175, then 225, whatever it is. The same principle and the same expectations and the same mentality should be applied to this type of training as it is with standard regular training. Now, there are their own nuances and differences, but the overarching concept of strength training, progressive overload, intent, intensity, those all apply the same. If you're gonna do a bench press, you're not gonna be all loosey-goosey, your feet are gonna be kind of chilling, you're gonna create leg drive, you're gonna create a nice tight hip, you're gonna create tension in your upper back and your thoracic spine, you're gonna get nice neutral stacked grip, or you're gonna let your arms flex and you get a good press up. And same thing with me when I'm doing my Olympic lifting. I'm gonna stay nice and tight. I am gonna be not thinking about what I'm gonna eat tomorrow. I'm gonna focus on where the bar is. I'm gonna take out the slack. So all those things apply, all those things carry on with this type of training. So I hope you found this useful. Do let me know how this goes. I will drop you a kind of like a mini program of how you can do this. I would recommend strongly that you treat this like an actual workout program as opposed to a pre and post workout like mobility drill. Now there is a caveat to that. So let's say you did this twice a week with the way we just said, 2 sets of each of those positions, or around that range, like say 5 to 6 sets total for each of those, 1 for flexion extension and 1 for the rotation. You do that twice a week as an actual workout day. Now obviously doing this maybe takes like 30 minutes, so you could do this at home or go into your gym, do this at first, and then you can go into your bench. Once you get into the habit of really creating this strength internally for your elbow and your elbow pain goes away, you can be like, all right, you know what? My elbow's strong enough. I'm doing really good. What I'm gonna now do is at the beginning of my workouts, I am gonna do my elbow cars. I'm gonna do about 5 of those. And then I'm gonna just do the flexed pails and rails and the extended pails and rails, 2 sets each. And I'm gonna just do the mid-range rotation, 3 sets, right? That goes a little bit more into the complication of the programming, which obviously I can help you out with that. But I just want you to know that, oh, you don't have to think like, oh my God, now every time I gotta go do a bench day, I gotta do all these exercises, blah, 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 just to kind of set the right mentality moving forward is, again, it's adaptable to your program. It's just like how with, let's say, if you want to get stronger at your bench, you're going to be like, hey, you know what? I got to work on my incline for a while because I feel like my upper chest isn't doing as much work. Or you know what? I'm really weak in this like final press range and the press out of my bench. So I got to get my triceps a little bit stronger. And when the triceps get stronger and now you're banging out reps at the lockout, you're like, all right, well, I can kind of tone off the tricep extensions for a while and I can go into now pause reps because I feel like at the bottom I'm not as strong. It's the same kind of idea. You're like, you know what? My elbow's really good now. Now I'm starting to feel like my shoulders are not as strong as I would like to be. Maybe you said you don't really do presses overhead, maybe because you do have pain when you're pressing overhead. So we can work on that next. So it's very adaptable. It's very configurable to your goals, your pains, and the style of training that you do, which is why I absolutely love this methodology. So I hope you found this useful. Do let me know how this goes. If you have any questions, drop me a DM. And yeah, that's about it. So thank you and see you next time.